Hey everyone, I am back with Leonard Cradit. Hey Leonard.
Hey, Jen, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Great, fantastic.
Good. Well, hey, I saw you were on a Realtor magazine, the cover. Look at you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And of course, your biggest claim to fame was you were on our podcast previously
Absolutely.
talking about showings, and that's a much bigger accomplishment than the Realtor magazine, of course.
Of course. I lived my bucket list, so it's good.
Exactly. You're done. Well, I think people will probably remember you from the podcast, but you are the franchise development manager for Exit Realty in Michigan, and you also run a real estate team there in Central Michigan, right?
Yes, that's correct. In West Michigan, yes.
In West Michigan. Okay, perfect. So if
Yes.
anybody has any referrals or questions, they can certainly reach out and we'll throw your contact information in there too later on. But I wanted to talk to you about we've been talking a lot about where are we going as real estate agents, like as we move into the future. And I think that the best predictor of the future is the past. And you've been a realtor for like since you were 10, 11 years old, something like that.
It feels like that, but probably closer to 35 years.
That's a long time. So can you tell us
Yeah.
of how our role, how it used to be and kind of how it's changed? And it'd be fun to hear about that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I mean, the past is important. I think it's good that we know the past because we should learn from it. And that helps us to build our future. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I one of my favorite things I say is the past is what's built the platform that allows me to reach the next level.
Yes.
And that's important. So, you know, back in the day, and I mean, back in the 70s, when I first got involved in real estate in various ways, I was doing things independently and so forth at that point. But it was different times. You know, the MLS was a book. It was literally a printed book
That's
that
crazy.
it was 3 to 4 inches thick, and in some markets, obviously much bigger than that.
Right.
And so, you know, to see a property, consumers had to contact the realtor and the brokerage. We had a lot more walk-in type traffic into the real
Mm-hmm.
estate offices. And so that was a good thing. And that kind of built, you know, the need for offices around the country and so forth and so on. And consumers would come in and they were completely dependent on the MLS and, you know, the information that was there. And so, as all things do, and I like to say this, you know, some things, as things evolve, they change. And you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have three key components that are part of any evolution, if I can say that. And the
Okay.
first is dependence. The second is independence, and the third is interdependence. And it makes sense when you think about it, because if you think about real estate as anything in life, and I'm going to use a very simple example. When you're a child, you're completely dependent on your parents, right? You're
Right.
dependent on them for your food, your shelter, all of the basic necessities, correct?
Right.
And then you come along your teenage years, and you start to test the waters, right? You
Right.
want that independence. You want to start to do things on your own, and then you come to become an adult. And so you go out and you do things on your own, and sometimes adults come back home and
Oh,
they say to their
no.
parents,
Boomerang kids. Yeah.
exactly, and they say to their parents, you know what, you were right, you were correct. I fought for my independence, but here I am. Well, real estate kind of did the same thing. You know, we had what we had. People were very dependent on realtors. The MLS was under control, and then as things began to evolve in the business, the MLS became electrified. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, digitized and available to people. So guess what? Consumers started to be able to have access to the same information that all realtors had.
Right.
And so realtors got scared.
Yeah.
Sounds a little familiar like how we are today, right?
Right.
And I'm going to talk about that. But the point is they got scared because they felt, well, gosh, consumers won't need us anymore because they can have all this information. Right. They can have all this information at their fingertips now, and they don't need to come into the offices anymore, and so on and so forth. So one of the things I like to point out is that some things, there's two things I kind of live and die by here. The definition of a fad is revolutionary, and a trend is evolutionary.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's when you think about it, that's what we're living through. Some things are fads in our life. They come and go, just like where we are today. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between the past and the present, but some things today are fads. We see them as realtors. We go, okay, wow. Sometimes it makes us a little scared, a little uncertain, nervous. And sometimes it's not going to last. They go away. We've seen it. Things happen like that. So today, the realtors we used to be dependent, and back then the commission splits were a lot higher at the brokerages. You were at a broker, you paid 50% of your commission automatic towards the brokerage, okay? And the best you could hope for was a 50% split for your commission. As things began to evolve, just like independence, and I go back to that example again, the realtors, especially the top producing realtors, began to say, no, wait a minute, I don't want to give up that much of my income. Yeah. And so now we saw a large period of time where, especially the top producing realtors in certain offices, they just spun off and they got their own offices. And now today we have, there's 1.4 million realtors in the United States, and 82% of the real estate offices are independently owned. And so, and these are NAR statistics. And so that's part of the evolution that I'm talking about.
Can I ask you a question real quick about?
Please.
Okay, so when the clients would come into the office, or I assume there would be a sign in front of the house, right? That's how they knew which office to go to, or that it was for sale. Is that right?
Well, that was part of it. Or they would stop in, let's say they would come to town and they'd find a real estate office. Let's say you didn't know you're getting relocated for work, for example, and people would stop by your office and say, what's for sale? Yeah. And so they would come in with a very open-ended question like that versus, oh, I saw a sign in front of the house on Broadmoor Street, that kind of thing. So you had both. You had a lot of walk-in traffic.
So but the offices would cooperate, and they would share what was for sale, or was it only what was in your brokerage?
They tried to hold information initially a little close to the collar because, of course, it was their listing.
Right.
They didn't. In fact, originally they didn't want the MLS when they realized that people could have access to that information so quickly and easily. A lot of the realtors didn't want that, and that's why they suddenly created real estate associations and so forth to be able to protect some of that information and drive the traffic. Yeah, drive the traffic back to those offices. So it was more, they would try to get you to, as a consumer, to be their client exclusively, and they would try to take you, we actually drove clients out to the properties to show them the properties and so forth. And, nowadays, of course, we don't do that. We meet them there, and, it's different. Again, it's evolved. So, yeah, that's how it was back then. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And today, the realtors back then were, I don't want to say totally, but very dependent on the brokers.
Yeah.
They were dependent on the brokers, and that larger commission split was to cover their marketing costs and the things that the brokers would do to maintain their offices. But what happened is that as the agents got smarter, they realized that there were other options available to them. And so they took advantage of that. And now today, we as agents are expected to be good marketers, good networkers, We have to be very knowledgeable in real estate, and we have to be very knowledgeable in technology, right?
And in
So,
psychology.
and in psychology, I would agree with that, and in
Yes.
psychology. So we are expected, part of our evolution as agents and brokers is that we have to be much more efficient and proficient at what we do. And brokerages, you know, they, during that time frame, they went from these high fee models to different types of models where we've seen everything, you know, the 100% or so forth, you know, which if you're a lot of people, you know, if you're paying fees, you're really not 100%.
Right.
Because those fees technically come out of your commission, whatever it is, no matter how large or small, right? So that really doesn't, you know, it's kind of an illusion that you're 100% commission or whatever the case is. But there's been, those models have evolved throughout real estate. So, you know, brokerages run on slim margins now. I mean, the average brokerage is running on like 5 to 8% margin.
Yeah,
profit.
I can't believe that they
tight.
make money, but like to your point, as agents, and I talk about this in our podcast all the time. I mean, we are small businesses owners. We are like a mini brokerage in ourselves. You know, I think there will be at some point where I'm hoping like maybe we do more front end business training, business and sales training, and maybe the amount of realtors will go down, but the proficiency of the ones that are left will go up. And then we become, I mean, we then are our own business, not have to be licensed with somebody else. Makes no sense.
Yes. No, you're absolutely correct, Jen. It's funny you say that because that's the truth of it. I often tell people that real estate is a vocation, not a vacation.
Right, exactly.
Am I right?
You're right.
Because there's no such thing, if you think about it, there's really no such thing as a part-time realtor. I believe you're either productive or you're non-productive.
Right.
And an interesting statistic today, 70% of all licensed agents and realtors earn less than $1,000 a month.
That's crazy.
That's
but a
scary.
lot of people get their license because they want to buy their own stuff or whatever, right? Like they're not all to get their license to be realtors, like real estate agents like we are.
That's correct. And that's what I'm talking about as part of this evolution. And some of that has to do with not only have realtors gotten more education, but the consumers have gotten more education through television programs and all sorts, the internet and all sorts of things, you know, and that's part of what drives where we are. If we don't, as realtors, continue to evolve and meet the needs of the consumers, then we are going to get left behind because the consumers will ultimately prevail. They will find a way to satisfy their wants, which is to buy and sell property. They will find a way to do it. And so you have a lot of that going on right now. I mean, consumers, they choose the internet for two reasons. It's speed and autonomy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's what it is. And you see the day and age of what I like to call ego marketing, where agents used to put out there, everything was about me. It was, it's about me. I'm a great agent. I'm $1 million producer. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a this. You know what? The consumer really doesn't care about that anymore.
No.
And I don't know that they ever really cared about it, to be honest. You know, I always have lived by a very simple rule, which comes from Zig Ziglar, and that is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Oh,
and
true.
That's what
That's
I live
a nice
and die
quote.
by.
Yeah.
I live and die by that. And technology, you know, feeds independence. We've got more and more technology, and this is a two-edged sword. When I say that, I mean realtors, we're getting more technology, so we're getting more independent. We're able to do more things. I mean, look at yourself, your own company, how it's developed on those types of same premises, right?
Right.
Your company, as is mine, has evolved from some of the problems that real estate models have had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful because that's the type of thing that's going to sustain us going forward. You know, it's people are just smarter and they're much more wiser. And you know, the thing is 86% of buyers today, 86% of them begin looking at homes on the internet.
Oh, I thought it was
before
higher.
86%, according to NAR,
Okay.
that they begin their home search on the internet, and they try to find as much information before they ever contact a realtor personally.
Yeah.
And
they always know more.
We are seeing exactly, and we are seeing trends in the industry. Again, media tends to jump to whoever's the loudest voice, right?
Sure.
So if consumers, you know, realtors are guilty. We're all guilty of this. You know, we complain and we're nervous, we're scared because of the evolution of the business and the industry. And so the media runs and says, oh my, there must be a huge problem. You know, in 2008, I lived through that crash,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that unfortunately we partially helped contribute to build, you know, with easy lending practices and all that. We all know that story. But the fact is that we now have to step back and do things very different for the future. And the consumer is and always has been, which is kind of takes us back to my first podcast with you, why it's so critical to never let go of that relationship with the consumer.
Right.
Service, you know, another thing that I absolutely live and die by is value equals income.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no better truth than that.
Yeah.
And we as realtors have to create that value, and we create it differently today. We do it with the technology and the training that we are, you know, afforded and able to take advantage of. Realtors, they do change companies on a regular basis. And the number one reason they do it isn't necessarily money.
No.
They want and need the education and the training, whether it's training in technology or all of those four things I mentioned, marketing and real estate knowledge in general. Whatever it is, they're not getting what they need. And so they're moving to that change, which is right. They should do that. They should seek it out. If real estate is truly your vocation and it's going to be your career, you should seek out that knowledge and the tools and the support that helps you personally succeed.
Yeah, I agree. I think like I'm taking away like a couple of things and I'm thinking about like our conversation. So I think definitely I agree with you as like the agent, as the business owner, we do need to take like control of our business, right? So if you need more education, go and get it. Like you can't expect somebody to always be like telling you what you need. Like you have to go get it. Everybody's at a different point, right?
Correct. And yep, I agree with that.
Were you going to say something?
Nope, you were exactly right on that point. So you have to go get it. That's why, as I say, it's not a vacation, it's a vocation. Many people, and I've heard this, and I'm sure you have too, some realtors, oh, wow, this sounds like easy money, or they get the impression on television because of these misleading programs on television that it's easy money, that anybody can just get a real estate license, and suddenly they're going to make great incomes and so forth and so on. And the reality is that's just not true.
Well,
it's a business like any other business.
Yeah, but you can easily get a license, but it's much more difficult to be successful in it. But I also think that as an industry, we need to do better, which we touched on. Like we need to do better training our people. And I also think what's been happening on the internet is internet was invented for the information, which is great, but now it feels like it's going towards incorrect information. So we also have to figure out how we're going to take the correct information back and be able to offer that to the consumers in a more efficient way that weeds out all the non-true stuff.
Absolutely. You have to be able to, the only way we as realtors are going to know whether something is inaccurate or untrue is if we ourselves are better trained and more knowledgeable,
Correct.
right?
And if we
So
talk
that's
to
what
each
we,
other too, and like
yes.
communicate and, you know, learn from each other.
Well, and that brings me to what I said was the third element of a true trend and evolution, and that is interdependence. The
Yes.
interdependence stage is where I think we're headed. I think we're beginning to get there. As you said, we should collaborate and work with each other. And I think more and more companies and agents are doing that, and I'm
Yes.
happy to see it.
Yeah.
Everything's different. There's room in this industry for many different concepts and models, and who's to say which one is the perfect one? It's whatever's perfect for you, the agent, personally.
Right.
And that's the magic right there. And so the bottom line is, though, the interdependence is where we can share that, we collaborate and cooperate with information, activities, and things that help ultimately the consumer. And that's where we create that value as realtors that is going to turn into income in the future. Yep.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you being on. I do agree with you that it's a good, if you have a concern or you want to know what the future holds, the past is the first key, and to look at how that's evolved so you can see like what happened. But if anybody has a referral for you in Michigan, or they're interested in learning more about having an Exit Realty franchise, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Reach out to me. You can email me at lcradit@exitrealty.com, or you can call me or text me at 616-213-2051. And I'd love to give referrals back to any of the agents out there that are watching this as well. That's where this interdependence comes together, and I'm happy to do it. It's a two-way street. So stay sharp, everybody. And Jen, thank you for taking such a leadership role in educating people, because what you're doing is making a huge difference. And I'm glad and honored to be a part of it.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Leonard. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.
You too.